all of the webinar series are kind of tied to a project we're working with the ITA on around making more trade resources available to, or project resources available to teachers across the province, but also to community organizations and people who want to try doing trades discovery with their students or their youth. And so, yeah, I'm really excited for this one. This project that you're hearing about today, and Casey as a human being, are some, like, one of the things that I'm most proud of having known that we created. It was also one of the things I've not been involved in at all, so I won't talk for the next hour. Those of you who are used to me babbling on will appreciate that. So yeah, so I'm excited that this one is a chance that we get to share this with the world, and yeah, I've really encouraged. There's a small group of us here, and I think we know almost everyone, so feel free to jump in and engage in dialogue as we go. It's a pretty unique thing that that Renee and Casey have pulled off, so I'm happy to share. Again, I do want to say this is a project we're doing with the ITA. They've been really amazing in their support of figuring out ways that we can explore how we can promote that different entry points into the trades. And one of those that we really see as valuable is being able to say that this is some of the ways that we can engage young people in using tools and starting to understand what a trade career actually looks like through that. So again, thank you to Lisa/Jason, who's also Lisa today, for supporting us in doing that.
Thank you, Jordan. Sorry, it doesn't say Lisa.
So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Steve, aka Renee. I think Steve is Renee's Andy Richter today. So we'll see how it goes.
Can't turn my video off now. Dang it.
No,
Okay.
stuck. We're
Right.
stuck. Okay. So the project that we're going to be speaking about, the picnic table and bench project, had its genesis at least 2 years ago, when we started talking about the idea of running a trades exploration camp in the summertime. And Sheila and I had gone in and done some work with Milieu Child and Family Services at the South Van Learning Center. They have, different locations, but that was the location where I knew one of the teachers. Is a VSB teacher, but anyway, not to bore you with those details, but we started looking at how much they enjoyed it. It's a fairly small group, and the summer times, at least then, were a bit of a slow time. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to spend a week, maybe two, and do some projects? And then you're not, what we typically end up doing is kind of rushing in an hour, maybe 80 minutes, something like that. And then you're off to the next, either next group or the next school, so that we'd be able to linger a little bit and maybe get in a little bit deeper. And I know that Randy and I have had those discussions, do you try and do a little bit with more people, or do you go a little bit more in depth, kind of those two philosophical approaches. And I thought maybe here's a way to get a little bit more depth. So Derek, hello, Derek. Derek and I had I think that's when we started having some initial discussions, because of course the big challenge with schools closed over the summer for the most part is, where would this happen? Trying to find a venue where we could do different things. And at this point, we had no idea what the project was even going to look like. It was just a concept. And then maybe Derek, you can jump in. You're younger than me, so maybe your memory is a little better, how that kind of morphed. Because I know that I did some pretty hokey looking sketches and drawings and stuff, and those went back to you, and you had comments, and we tweaked to figure out how could we do something with people who had little to no technical experience, had very little access to tech ed classes, if any, how we could make that work. Do you remember?
Not particularly, but what I did like about the project and about the concept was, just incorporating metal, steel, and fabrication. These are types of skills that don't often get into kids' projects. So a lot of times in kids' projects, you're going to build a birdhouse, or you're going to build a wooden box of some sort, whatever. So typically all like carpentry type tools or a little metal something. But the idea with this one was that more fabrication, more industrial type feel to it. And yeah, you could do a picnic table all out of wood, but I really like the idea and the concept, and something that we could bring to the table was the metal side of things. So that's what inspired me. And then, you know, back and forth with Renee. He's a wonderful draftsman, if you don't know this yet, but he does do good drawings. And so we worked back and forth to create the picnic table that we did end up building. So.
Okay. So, you know, that's kind of the genesis part of it. Jordan, did you want just to kind of start going through the different stages?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things just to note is Jessie just kind of disappeared. She's living on a very small island and the internet is windy. So I will attempt to be Jessie and share the pictures.
Oh, great. Okay.
So my apologies for being caught off guard for a second there. So yeah, I think one of the things to really highlight in this is that you've done 2 years of this project with two very, very distinct versions of it.
So yeah, if actually now that you're reminding me a little bit, so with Milieu, because these were at-risk youth, and one of the things that I thought would be really valuable for them was to create something that they would use. And just looking around the youth center, you know, like the first thing that came to mind was I looked and it looked like a prison, right? It had these awful, it's on Fraser and 33rd. So it's not so much for the people inside as the people outside, but they had these bars on all the windows and doors, and it really looked awful. And the first suggestion was we could do something decorative that still serves that function, but is just more aesthetically pleasing. And I knew that, you know, that metal would make sense with the ironworkers. So that, you know, we talked a little bit about that. And then they had a space, and I could see they had this weird eclectic collage of chairs and benches and things that people were sitting on. And it looked pretty rough. And I thought, you know what, why don't we make a really nice table and benches? And so you could see it fits into a kind of a nook. The benches were designed so that they could slide underneath the table. So it actually takes up very little space. You know, it can be used outdoors if necessary. It's very heavy. You can move around, but it ended up being a bit heavier than I thought for reasons that we'll go into. But anyway, that's kind of the idea behind this. So this picture is taken after it's been used for about 9 months. And you can see what condition it's in. When I went in there after a full year, one of the kids immediately apologized that there was a dent in it, right? Like, and when you look around this place, like the other stuff's really trashed. They're very proud of this thing that they made. And they, you know, they talk about it, and it's really cool, that sense of pride and accomplishment. And some of them will immediately launch into the technical details of how the different steps were accomplished. So it's really neat to see kids that are 14, 15, 16 years old now. So this is this year's project. They don't have a lot of space, so I wasn't going to make a duplicate that had nowhere to live. So I got something that's the same. It's the same steel. It's the same cedar, but it's smaller. And sadly, they've ended up having to separate it anyway. So it's a table and one little bench, and then the other bench is sitting in a separate room. So anyhow, okay.
So maybe this is a good chance to introduce Casey and her role in all of this. Casey, just going to pull up a few of your slides here. Do you want to kick it off in your role in all of this and how you came involved?
I came into the trades very late in life. I started at 33. So talking to kids when they're young and trying to get them excited about different possibilities, because you don't always hear about different trades, and you don't, you won't pick it if you don't hear about it. So, and ironworking is not, is not electrical, it's not carpentry. You don't hear about it all the time. So we really need to advertise what we do, because we don't have a ton of people coming into our line of work. So talking to young people and let them know that ironworking is a great place to go is paramount for us to keep going, to get young people into our trades. So I got into the trades very late. I did a bunch of odd jobs and was getting nowhere, and I said, no, I need a career. I need to find something that's allow me to take care of myself and make some good money, and I need something interesting to do. And ironworking is very interesting, and it keeps you hyped up. There's the amount of skills in my trade is very vast, so I can continually do something different every job site that I go to, and that keeps me excited about going to work. So.
Hey, Jordan, I got a question here for Casey. Was there any thought about somehow using rebar into a project rather than the square tubing?
Sure, we can always use rebar in a project. We have there's somebody tying right there. So we tried to, if people were getting a little bored with one thing, then we brought them in and tried to show them how to tie some rebar ties and also some knots, because as iron workers, we use a lot of knots with our rigging. So we were trying to keep them engaged any way that we could, and just keep adding on things for them to learn. So this is one of the young ladies tying it. She actually caught on pretty quick. She was pretty good at it.
So that was a difference from last year. This time you had a whole bunch of different stations. So whenever there was a bit of a lull, because we had two instructors. It was, that part of it was pretty deluxe. We had two instructors on the welding, and I was looking after some of the carpentry stuff, and Derek was doing layout and drilling, and we had painting going on. But you've always got one or two people, because we were trying to bang this through pretty quickly and keep it, they had to come in a bus each time. So there was scheduling issues. So it was great having those different stations and getting a little bit of a chance at the end, to wrap things up. Did a little bit of the boom lift, which was kind of cool, and the kids really got a chance in a very real environment. It was, I think we were close to basically 2-to-1 kind of a ratio. So, and Sheila joined us as well. I know it says Jordan, but that is actually Sheila Sadler. Hello. Sheila was there as well to add expertise. So maybe actually, Sheila, could you speak a little bit about how we started it off, like the day one on both the 2020 and the 2021 camp?
So what we started with was going into their classroom, and I bring a virtual welder with me. So when we get in there and I set up the welder, there we are there. What was super fun was the next day we got to the iron workers, and one of the boys was working with Derek, and he used the word porosity. And he was so excited that he knew the right word to use when he was welding. He built a crazy statue for his mom too, but anyways. So it was really nice to be able to go in the day before and give them just a gist of words and terminology and holding on to the gun. They're really great kids. They're so fun to hang out with. I could spend all day, every day with them. the pride they get when they get to hang out with ironworkers is amazing. The Ironworkers Union is so cool and so fun to go to. You guys are amazing. And they give them such a sense of pride. They were using torches, they were using everything that we use in our daily lives. I'm not an iron worker, I'm a sheet metal worker, but it was really neat to see the pride from these kids because they maybe don't have something to be prideful of. And to teach them that they could do something that they didn't think they could do was incredible.
I'll just add to your question there, Randy. You had asked if rebar could be substituted for the tubing or the HSS. You can use anything. One of the objectives and the reasons you would go with the HSS over, like say, rebar would just be sheer weight. So rebar is a solid steel member, and therefore it is substantially heavier than an HSS or a tubing piece. So weight-wise, but if you were doing limited materials or you wanted to utilize different practical pieces, 100% you can weld rebar if it's weldable rebar. And so there's lots of different art projects that could be done utilizing rebar. We like to, if possible, feature our trade pieces in different ways. So I'd be quite interested to incorporate rebar into other projects down the road. But for this one here, it was a weight thing, why we ended up not trying to use rebar. It didn't really cross our mind, but it is a solid steel member. So, but yeah, no, 100%. If you've got materials, then, use what you got sometimes, right?
Years ago, when I was in Cumberland and Renee was up there the other day with me, I was able to find ATV frames, the crating packages for ATVs. And I actually did the entire school's benches, pretty much like you guys had with that table there. And it was all free. The only thing we paid for was the maple for the tops. So I don't know if ATV, motorsport places now, if the ATVs actually come in metal frames anymore, but it was a great free source for me. Like I said, I did there's about 8 or 10 benches there that I did with a
Yeah,
grade
they
9
look
class.
remarkably.
Yeah, they look really familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know, that's just a source for maybe sourcing free stuff if it still comes that way.
I was wondering if maybe we could take a moment. There's quite a few pictures of the actual process of making it with all of the students or with all the kids. Do you want to walk through kind of some of the steps that you took, and so that maybe we can identify places where you could amend it? I think one of the things that I really like about this project is the more I learn about it is the scalability of it. So there's a way of bringing it down to be simpler. So it's like, okay, you only have 2 days, what can you take on? Or you have a smaller group, as well as it can be like scaled up, which is fun. To imagine trying to get 20 people building a bench in a week might be ambitious, but there's a few ways to amend it. So I'll share my screen. I think these are in order, but if not, let me know and I can jump around.
Yeah, so Derek, I'm pretty sure that's for the bench, yeah?
Yeah, that would be one of the smaller leg sets. This one would have been out of the 2020 year. So we utilized a wire, a solid wire for our welding. So we've got a bunch of different varieties here that we can amend our welding machines to. So we went to an 035 solid core wire, which is just very easy, very simple to use for a new person trying. The other is the spark level on this type of wire is fairly low. So the chances of fire are substantially less than some of the types of welding that an iron worker would do. So that's what we did. So we worked right with them. A lot of the fit up, we utilized the students for tacking. So which putting little pieces of welding in different places to hold the project together. Then you would work together, make sure everything was square. And then one of the things with welding is depending on how if you know much about welding or not, as you sequence your welding, it'll actually bend your steel a bit. So you got to make sure you weld in different orders. So the instructor would be there with them and say, okay, put a weld along here, put a weld along here. The beauty, this is why I like steel over wood, is you can cut it a couple times and then refit it and then cut it a couple more times. So if the weldment didn't go in nicely, you can grind it out and do it again. And so at the end of the day, you can still end up with a very beautiful project, but it gave them chances to try it. If it didn't work so well, then we grind it out and put it in again. So So that was the one leg, and then putting them together in frames and legs. So this would have been one of the individuals center punching some of the holes to take the carriage bolts to put the wood tops on. But yeah, you would go through a fit up stage, and then a welding stage, and then a cleaning stage. So you'd have to take all the welding splatter off, any sharp edges. So we did use a lot of, some power tools. We tried to get the tools in the hands of the students as often as possible. And then once you've done your cleanup, then we drilled holes, made sure there was no burrs on the holes, and then we would have went into a painting sort of phase, if you will. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky, is there's a fair bit of work right off the get-go, but then we get a little bit of a lull in work, because once you start putting paint on it, you put a coat of paint on it, but it's got to dry for a bit. So at that point, when we were putting paint on it, then Renee, this was still again first year, Renee took them and started doing a lot more woodworking with them and finishing off some of the boards. We also had a little structural steel mock-up that we had the students put together in the first year as well. And in the second year, then we had a bit more of the stations going on. But yeah, that's the table. The bench itself is just basically a mini version of that. There's quite a few little 2-inch weldments that go on these things. And so they're great, because come in and put a piece of weldment in, and then, we like it, we leave it, we don't like it, we grind it out, and then some other student can come. So it's a lot of little bits, and it gave a lot of chance for everybody to have a chance if they wanted to. The age range that we were working with, some weren't comfortable with it. So some of them actually would rather be a spectator. And so again, because it was fairly low impact, low spark, some of those that weren't comfortable actually doing the welding actually just stood and watched and were observers of it and stuff. And those that loved the welding actually did a fair bit of welding. So it was pretty neat project that way. And I'm a big fan of keeping busy. So we also had many other times when there wasn't something happening right yet, or maybe one of my instructors had to do a bit of the fit up at the time. Then some of the other kids would just be welding, or we'd use the aerial work platform to take them up. So I always try to keep the kids busy as possible, but the project was, had a lot of little components to it. And I do agree with Jordan that it is scalable. You can take it down, you can get it bigger. I think you'd be fairly hard pressed to get it done in a day. So it would definitely not be a day project, but over a couple of days, or if you only had 2 hours for a number of days, it would be very doable.
So it was a 5-day camp, both years. And the first year we were really only on site with you for 3 days. So and they were there from 10 o'clock. It was supposed to be from 10 till 2. And then after the first day, the kids didn't want to get back on the bus. So then we ended up having them till 3 or 3:15. So, which was kind of cool. And I have to say, I really love the fact that some of your members that were coming in for different, reasons, and they kind of wandered into the back to see what was kind of going on. And that was so cool to have, just the interaction. It was really neat to see kids in an adult environment, and you managed to make everyone feel really, really safe and comfortable. So that was, I have to say, very special. Yeah, this is obviously a little lunchtime trying to recreate that epic, that photo a little closer to the ground than the original.
Amazing. I'm going to ask to pause here for a second. We haven't gone through the woodworking components of it, but we can do that as well. I'm just wondering if there's questions around.
Sorry, Casey, could you, we kind of blew through a couple of those pictures. Could you maybe speak to the thickness of the material, the HSS, because that might have not have been evident to everybody. If you go back a couple pictures. Oh, you got it there?
I have a couple examples here as well. This is about the size of what you were using. I think we're close to it here. But I'm not sure, is that more the thickness?
We would have tried to get it as thin as possible to cut down weight.
On wait time. Yeah, so as you can see, it's a little thin, so it's a little bit more difficult to weld, especially the kids. Because they did really well, they didn't blow through, and they had a great time welding with this. So
the first year it's 1/8 thickness. So it
What
was
is-
actually quite thick, and that was done on purpose so that people who'd, you know, who'd only ever been on a simulator and then tacking the next day and then welding the day after that, right? It was a very steep learning curve. And the thicker steel enabled them to weld and not blow through constantly. So there's
Yeah.
something a more, you know, if you were doing this, let's say in a grade 11, 12 situation with people with more familiarity with welding, then you could go for the thinner walled material.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah.
Sorry, I just thought I'd throw that into.
No, that's great. Yeah, no, exactly. You're always trying to concentrate your heat on the thickest part because you don't want to blow through and have to fix. And steel is fixable, but you can create quite a mess.
And then this year's, I'm not sure if it was one of the instructors, I'm not sure, or maybe Casey, the idea of stepping down, right? I didn't do that the first year, except kind of not intentionally on the bottom rail. But this time you suggested, and in future iterations, we'll do more stepping down. So from 2 inch to 1.5 inches to 1 inch, it's much easier to weld then. So you're not kind of welding along a corner like that, but you're welding to a flat surface. It's much easier.
Yeah, depending on how much experience you guys have with metal or not. On HSS, like Casey's got here, with HSS, it's got a rounded edge. And when you try to take a square, and see if we would try to do this over video. So you take a square edge over a rounded edge, it's sometimes hard to get a weldment in there. Whereas if you step it down so it can hit more like this, it ends up being a lot easier to get weldment all the way around. So that's one thing. Yeah, if you step down from your HSS from a 2 inch to a 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches, and just stepping down, it makes your joints a little bit easier and cleaner. And yeah, just a bit easier to work with. And then sometimes cheaper and then less weight as well.
Okay.
Was that good?
Jordan, you oh, I thought you froze.
That's good. Yeah, so I think what was really neat about the project, so there's lots of variations to it. When we've talked about it as something that we could undertake in future scenarios, there's been a few different examples of the environment that we would like do this in that wasn't that kind of summer camp option. We were talking recently with a couple of different schools about the idea that you could actually have this be something that high school metal class could bring into a younger group, to actually have them try it out with the grade 8s and the 9s and really have that peer-to-peer mentoring learning experience, and then build it as part of, like, if you think of it as part of the garden party suite of projects, then have them build something in the garden that has some permanence, but also very discreetly recruits for your shop classes, which, you know, very discreetly recruits for your trades programs, which very conveniently leads them to working for the ironworkers, you know, because why not? But there's also other options with this too, where if it was a shop class as an adult shop class, or sorry, a high school shop class, or as a community organization trying to pull this off, it may end up being something that could be done as a fundraiser or be donated to community as well. So there's lots of layers to this that can be done. I know that SD61 here in Victoria did a whole project around the friendship benches, and they paid a lot of money to a contractor to build them some benches. So being able to take this and incorporate it into other kind of ideas are definitely there. One of the things that I am a little bit have like a, oh my goodness, I missed out on something. There's a few anecdotes with what you've done in both summer camp experiences. I'm hoping that maybe you can share a little bit. I think what's neat about this approach with having industry and having tradespeople be the leading the youth through the camp is that you actually have a chance for them to see that connection to, hey, I could do this. So I know, Casey, you've had a few feel-good stories. Are you willing to share those?
Few feel-good stories? Oh, geez.
Yeah.
It's, you know what, it's just, for me, a lot of the time, it's seeing another woman ironworker on site and realizing, oh, there's another girl here. This is fantastic. Where did you come from, right? And to go to schools and to see young girls be interested in this is fantastic. I set up a school tour through one of our contractors' shops, and they were building their new shop at the same time. So they were seeing a shop setting, they were going through that, and then they were seeing the ironworking setting, ironworkers at work at the same time. So they were kind of seeing the best of both worlds with steel. So, and I had this young girl, and she's like, that's me. That's what I want to do. You know, that's get me up there now. And she was so excited. And I'm like, okay, I'm signing you up. Here we go. Like that to me is just so much fun to have somebody see what I do and to be excited about it as well. Yeah.
Was it the first year or the second year that the kid made the skate rail to take home?
The second year.
Second year.
Yeah. And have they come back with it broken and tried to fix it yet, or it's still standing?
It's not going anywhere.
That skate rail will not fail. It's on a 4x4 with reinforced steel on the edges. It's not going nowhere. So you'll be skating on that for quite a while. But there was a story out of the first year too, Donovan, and there was another boy that was with him in the first year. And they kept going to our scrap metal bin and just pulling stuff out, and they kept welding it together. And they ended up with these giant monstrosities of just stuff, of just metal put together and welded. And they took it home and they were so proud. And the one kid, Donovan, his mom was saying like, oh, good on you. That's so beautiful. And even came back the next year and he says he still has it at home. And we're looking at it, and fair enough, it's a beauty in the beholder, right? But it's just this monstrosity of steel, but he was so proud of it, and good on him, right? Like, you know, you created something and you built it, and to see that pride, and, you know, in the teaching world, you see those lights go on all the time. So it's, you know, it's neat in our world to be able to participate in that.
Well, those three young sisters who were so very shy, the one sister came up, she put on the rebar belt and she started
What's that?
on the rebar cage.
No idea.
Oh, we can't hear you. Sorry, Casey, we can't hear you. It seems like whenever Derek takes over, then the voice gets quiet. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
It's the difference in voices. Is that better?
No,
Yeah.
I think it's the
That's
location of the microphone.
Maybe, probably. No, the two young sisters who were so very shy, to see that one, we asked both of them if they wanted to tie rebar, and one of them finally stepped up, and she got to it right away. It was kind of very natural to her, and you could see that even though she was still hesitant because she's just naturally shy, she took to it and she just started and went, and one of the other young guys, we showed him 5 different ties and he picked it up right away, and we were testing him after. Okay, this one, do the saddle tie, do the snap tie, do, you know, and he remembered them. He remembered them, and he could, you know, whichever one you threw out at him, he could do.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
Lots of no, it those sort of things. You just look around and you know, how can we do this for more groups? And I'm gonna maybe put you on the spot a little bit. I know we've talked about maybe doing 2 groups next year, but the ironworkers, the rest of you may not know this, but they have a fantastic mobile setup that it does go around the province. And I know you book well in advance, but how many booths are in the trailers?
So in our most recently built one, we've got a 5-booth mobile welding trailer, and it's designed to be moved around the province to go in. My ultimate goal is to have a 3-way partnership when I take it out. So one is I've got membership in an area that needs to practice and do welder testing. So I take it to an area and I get my membership to practice. The other people I want to connect with there is with the local high school or maybe a trades sampler program or something, where we come in there and we run with a trade sampler program in the morning, and then my membership use it in the afternoon. And then while I'm there, I also do safety training for my membership. But it's kind of this partnership between it works for me and it works for the high school world as well. And so that one is something that we're working on and developing and trying to create partnerships. We've piloted it through, there's a Victoria alternative school that was doing a trade sampler program. And so we actually have 2 mobile trailers. One is a very large semi trailer. So we took the semi trailer over to the island for 2 different years in the fall to do a welding portion of that trade sampler program. And so that's the model that we want to do. COVID's put a bit of a wrench into what we're hoping to have done already, but that is something that we'll be looking to work on partnerships going forward to say, hey, where does this work to take the trailer, where we can help out with the local community, and I can also help out with my local iron workers in the area. Our area is all of the province of BC, so we've got iron workers everywhere. So any sort of somewhat major hub, I would love to take the trailer and partner with a high school of some sort. So.
And small communities as well, because we've spoken about, different, because you have your own power, right?
Yeah, fully mobile. The ultimate objective in the trailer itself is to be its mobile welder practice and testing, functioning towards the ironworking market. I don't try to get into apprenticeship training with it. That's not my objective. There's public schools and training institutes that deal with the apprenticeship side of things. Mine is membership training and outreach and trying to just get people engaged in the trade. So, 2 birds with 1 stone while I'm in an area sort of thing. But because it's on the back of a pickup truck, as far as towing it around and then a generator to power the thing, we are fully mobile and capable of going kind of anywhere. So.
And just as a quick little plug, some years ago, you drove that into the convention center, right? And we ran people through there in the convention center for several days, right? Indoors. So that's how clean it is. Like the smoke eaters that are in there are outstanding. So it looks really nice and it's very clean. It's not just welding booths. There's, you've got some other stations and that in there. So you can cover a lot of different processes.
What's sort of the candidates that you're looking for? What's the age that students can get into being an iron worker? Is there any restrictions? What do they need to come in with? Whereabouts would they sign up? Especially when you're thinking of like a place like Courtney or Campbell River and that. How does a young guy get into this?
So I'll answer that 2 ways. One way is, as far as this camp was involved and concerned, the approach that Local 97 had with this camp is just outreach. We want to get, people interested in trades and more industrial trades, because that exposure doesn't happen to a lot of people. So on this camp sort of thing, it was just exposure. As far as actual recruitment and where do we normally get iron workers from, if I was talking to a high school student, I would be telling them to go look on BCIT's website and look up the Iron Worker Foundation program. We've got a long-standing history with the Iron Worker Foundation program. We will hire every graduate out of that program as long as they can show up for miss no more than 6 days in the 6 months of school and have 70% in every training module. If they are extremely easy to get, right? Class of 16 students, I'm usually accepting 15 and a half. Once a year, there's usually one kid that just can't show up every day. But other than that, we accept everybody out of that program. We've got a guarantee to them. The guarantee is we will sponsor you immediately into an apprenticeship as an iron worker, and we will put you on our dispatch list and get you out to work. Work is busy right now. That dispatch usually happens within the first day. So they are coming out of school on a Friday, and Monday morning, we are already lining them up to go to work. In slower times, the construction industry is high and low. And in slow times, sometimes it's taken me about a month to get them out. But we have a commitment to that class that even if I've got apprentices laid off at the time, we will put them on the list and we will get them out to work, in a timely manner. And so that's where I would direct anybody. If you're interested in it, go to BCIT's website. There's a fair bit of information on the Iron Worker Foundation program. And that's where we would hire from. The other option that I would give some people for Courtney Comox area is, if you can, then maybe look at doing your welding or foundation through high school. And then maybe with your foundation welding, I can get you working as a pre-apprentice. But then ultimately, I want you to take Ironworker Foundation. We're the Ironworkers Union. We utilize welding, but it's not our trade. Our trade is ironworking. But there's a lot of crossover there. And so if somebody came out of me from high school with a welder foundation, well, that's way better than somebody coming out of high school with nothing. So I don't guarantee employment out of welder foundation, but I've got a fighting chance at least, right?
Okay.
A great question. I like that.
There's also a question from Sherry, which is I think she's getting you on the road up to GW, Graham, which is that up in Chilliwack?
Yep.
Excellent. So it looks like you may have a pause on the way to the interior. So I'm sure I will follow up after this with everyone who's attending to make sure that there is the contact information for Derek and for us. Given that there's about 14 minutes left, I just wanted to check in. Are there other questions? And if not, I'll share a few last pieces. Brilliant. Well, if questions do come up, please, I think everybody at this point knows each other. This is, yeah. So Jesse, do you want to share it or do you want me to? Okay, sweet. So the other version of me is going to share it without my hands. Wow. Yeah, so one of the things that we are doing this year is we are working with a bunch of different partners to do presentations in schools. A lot of our presentations are workshop based. Renee's been on the road quite a bit recently, as he is currently. After, I think you've done 4 days now of workshops with different people. So if you are interested in finding out more about how to do presentations in schools or workshops in schools, you are welcome to reach out to us. The Skills Ready website is the easiest way to do that. If you don't already have our contact, you can go to the top right link, click on the educators, book your session, and then fill it in there. This is just our way of making it as efficient as possible for you to reach out and let us know what you need, and we'll get back to you in a pretty quick order. One of the things, though, always with this is there's a lot of different things that we can do, and if you've known us for what we've been around for, you're more than welcome to be like, hey, can we do this kind of thing? As well, I'm going to highlight the fact that the Ironworkers are their own people, and you can reach out to them directly. We, as much as we try to be their agent, they don't let us take 10%, so we just, send you there directly. I'm joking about that, of course, but so Derek and Casey are both, you can find them through this site, but also we'll make sure that the contact info is shared out afterwards. One of the other things I did want to highlight, I think everybody's familiar with this now, but if you go to our Skills Ready site and you can't find it, it's in the top right there under the projects portal. You can click through to the projects portal and find this project, as well as the other garden party projects that we've created. They're all here. As well, when you find the, whoa, this is an interesting version of it. This is the mobile version on full screen for you. So, oh, there. This is Gabriel Internet for you. So the garden party projects are those first 15 there. And then there's the Cedar and Steel picnic. We'll add the link to this webinar there. So if you want to share some of the, and we'll edit it down so you'll get the mostly the project discussion bits. So there'll be a link there for you to find this webinar afterwards as well. So yeah, that's kind of I think the majority of what we're here to present.